Welcome to Conversations with Dr. Skip Mason,
pastor, preacher, historian, author,
teacher, librarian, archivist, world traveler,
collector, family historian, avid reader, and creator of the popular Vanishing Black Atlanta Facebook page.
But a lot of folks who love history.
Most importantly, he's our dad, who loves his family and who taught us the importance of our history and having important conversations.
Join him now for this episode of Conversations with Dr. Skip.
People have been talking a bit about us lately. How we work, how we play, what we create, what we enjoy. But what do all these headlines really mean for us? Or for you? Great question. Let us show you around. Welcome to Cincinnati. Yeah, it's a beautiful place to be. When people come to visit, they can't help but get drawn in. It helps that we've got a compact downtown area, just 15 minutes from a major airport, the best airport in the U.S. Cincinnati is home to 10 Fortune 500 headquarters, loads of international brands, innovative startups, and entrepreneurs. So we've got a long history of global events, successful conventions, and really great parties, which is why we've made plenty of space for them. Somewhere artistic, somewhere fancy, somewhere historic, somewhere to take your breath away. No matter your style, we've got a place to fit. And you won't even have to go far when it's finally time to hit the hay. We've got you covered with brand new hotels joining our newly renovated stunning convention hotels, high-end boutique hotels, and all of them are just steps from the convention center. And of course, you'll want a bite to eat in between the meeting and sleeping. There are dining options everywhere. New hotspots, long-lasting classics, star chefs, even our chili parlors bring their A game. Hop on the Cincinnati Bell streetcar or just take a stroll around downtown. Each district has its own unique personality. Take in a game and local brew at the banks. Connect with friends and enjoy the night's entertainment at Fountain Square. Test your luck at Jack Casino or experience the eclectic flair of a revitalized and growing Over the Rhine, and all with restaurants and shopping to match. And when we said stroll, we meant it. These entertainment districts are just blocks from the city center and convention center. And once you've had a bite to eat, it's time for some fun. Sports? Oh yeah, we do sports. Reds baseball, Bengals football.
My brothers and my sisters, I greet you today. I'm excited that you are here. I wanted to open up with that video of all of the wonderful things in Cincinnati that we will not get to see. Let's face it. Come on, CMEs. When are we going to have time to go shopping and to go to the ballpark and to the museum once it begins on Saturday? So enjoy the video because that's the closest many of us going to get to some of their sites and attractions. But I thought I would get us a little hype. We are 20 days to the General Conference. I am Skip Mason. Delighted to welcome you to another conversation with our wonderful, hardworking, traveling all across the country aspirants for the Episcopacy. And I'll be bringing them up in just a few moments. But let me greet you in the wonderful name of our Lord and Savior. Let me greet our senior bishop, Bishop Lawrence L. Reddick, and Mrs. Wendy Jones Reddick. Had the pleasure of seeing them and hearing Bishop Reddick preach on yesterday at Bishop Thomas L. Brown's quadrennial celebration sponsored by Georgia North Conference. Let me greet also the Distinguished College of Bishops chaired by Bishop James B. Walker, Mrs. Dolores Walker, and let me greet my bishop, Bishop Thomas Lewis Brown and Dr. Louise Baker Brown. We had a grand celebration for them on yesterday. And many of the wonderful aspirants were present, as they have been throughout these quadrennial celebrations for our distinguished bishop. And also, let me greet the birthday girl, Dr. Teresa Duhart, who I think should be traveling back from Las Vegas. And that's all you need to know about that, because what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. I did tell, though, Dr. Duhart to bring me back a little building fund money. And so I'm hoping she'll have something for me when I see her in Cincinnati. But I'm so glad that you are here to share with us today as we continue the conversation. Let me, before I bring our guest up, in case you're not aware, for the last month or so, I've been having these conversations with candidates and Of course, you can go on Facebook or the CME Church web page or our YouTube page to view some of the previous conversations. I had a chance to share with the candidates for General Secretary of Lay, the candidates for General Secretary Ministry to Men, the candidates for General Secretary of Finance and Investments, the candidates for General Secretary of Personnel, the candidates, of course. We have listened to some of our Episcopal aspirants and another set as well. So you can find those shows on Facebook and YouTube. But today I am delighted to share with you 4 additional aspirants, maybe 5, but we have 4 who are here, and I'm going to bring them up now. We have the Reverend Dr. Billy Holloway. Dr. Holloway is the pastor of the St. John CME Church in Pine Mountain, Georgia. He is from the 6th Episcopal District. We have Pastor Cassandry Keys, who is the pastor of Mount Olive CME Church, Lexington, South Carolina, and she's a part of the 7th Episcopal District. We have the Reverend Peris J. Lester, who is the pastor of the Mount Olive CME Church in Memphis, Tennessee. He's also the presiding elder of the Northeast District of West Tennessee region out of the 1st Episcopal District. And we have Reverend Marvin Charles Lew, pastor of Stewart Memorial CME Church in Mobile, Alabama, 5th Episcopal District. They all do a whole lot of other things in the church that we know. But today, we're not talking about credentials. We're talking about the vision. We're talking about what it is you hope to do when you are elected bishop of this church. And we're going to spend some time with each one of them one-on-one and get an opportunity to hear their vision, to ask questions, and hear their response, and to have them make their case to all of the delegates who are watching. I would ask each of you if you would take a moment and to share this show to your Facebook page, to your church's Facebook page, and invite them to come and to share in these wonderful people who are sharing with us today. And so I'm going to put Pastor Keys and Presiding Elder Lester and Pastor Lou back in the guest room, and I'm going to spend some time with our first aspirant, Reverend Dr. Billy Holloway, who is no stranger, has a wonderful show, and that show is now on AIB, and he's doing a lot of other great things. And so, Dr. Holloway, I'm delighted to have you. Saw you yesterday briefly in Augusta, but I would like for you just to, as we begin, talk about why you're running. You know, for anybody who may not know, why have you decided now to offer yourself? Not now, but you put yourself out there a while back. But why do you think now is the time for you to offer yourself? And what do you bring to the bench should you be elected?
Well, that's certainly is a good question. And the reason why I chose this time to run, because I believe that the church is at a pivotal crossroad at this point. You know, here we are, we're coming through a pandemic, and we have to have persons who can represent our church and bring different things to the bench. You know, we have a great college of bishops, but I do believe that time has come for us now to take the church forward. You know, the church was established in 1870, and we have not grown, well, we've not moved in technology. You know, my area is technology. And I just believe that if we're going to be relevant for this present age, we've got to take the church into the new era with technology. And this pandemic showed us that we have to be prepared, that ministry would have to look beyond the 4 walls of the church. And that's what I want to bring to the bench. I want to bring this to let folks see our church. We have a wonderful church. The church has done great things, but we are our best kept secret. And I think when you got something good, you want to just make sure that everybody knows about it. And the only way to do that is to be able to bring technology to the forefront. And I think that when this pandemic came about, we saw that we were scrambling as a church, trying to find out how we're going to do ministry. And because we had not prepared ourselves, had not put a person in place who knew technology, we found ourselves way behind. And a lot of times when I'm watching other ministries, and when I see some of our ministries, it makes me want to keep on going. It doesn't make me want to stop. So again, I want to bring technology to the bench. I want to bring what I've learned through my television show that reaches 2.5 million households all across the country, and through sponsorship. And that's what we've got to have someone who knows this field. If you go to a doctor and if something is wrong with you, your doctor, your primary care physician, he's going to send you to a specialist, somebody who can do what he cannot do. And so I think many times in the church, we have not prepared ourselves adequately to have persons in place that can help the church move to its next level. And that's why I'm running. And I think that this pandemic has shown us that we've got to have some innovative minds. We've got to have some innovative people who already know what to do. You know what I'm saying? And I think even before the pandemic, and I reached out to you, tried to talk to you about how we can bring technology and do different things with technology. And I've also even approached several of our bishops that are on the bench. And but time just did not present itself to allow it to happen. And look at God. They always say that everything happened in God's time, God's seasoning, and now is the time. And again, I'm a product of the CME Church, trained at our School of Theology there in Atlanta, have a D-Min in ministry as well. And I have a television show. I do this every day. And I just want to be able to bring this part of our ministry to the world. I want to be able to take what I've learned and let the folks see the church. Because we realize that if it ever was a time that the world needs to see the church, it is now. With everything that's going on with the gun violence and everything, we need to be out on the forefront. And we need to do that with technology. Everybody has a smartphone these days. Everybody know how to text, and everybody know how to do TikTok, And so I think that the church, we've got to also be prepared to do it in a meaningful way, in a purposeful way. We've got churches all across our connections, and a lot of them don't get heard from. And I believe that we can take this ministry with technology and highlight what we're doing good across the world.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your response, your opening statement. I appreciate that. Let's get down to some nuts and bolts, some other responsibilities and duties that a bishop may have. One of the questions that has come that I want to pose to you: what is your plan for churches as a bishop who have lost young adults and want to also increase membership with men? If elected, what do you propose to do to address these two critical areas in our church?
Well, we would have to reach out to our young people. I believe that anytime you want to do something innovative, something new, if you want to draw people, you've got to equip yourself with some young people who know the heartbeat and the pulse of other young people. So as a bishop, I believe that a bishop would have to have young persons as part of the team, somebody who can relate and bring that information back to the bench. And also with our men, we know that on Sunday mornings, we have a church of women outnumber the men 3-1. And we've got to also make church inviting for our men. And again, we have to reach out to the ministry to men departments across, that are in our district. And let's ask them, what can we do to bring men back to church? Because we know that without men in the home, we've seen what has happened. And I just believe that the church has to be very intentional to reach out to men and young people in order to grow our church.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The next question I want to put to you, Dr. Holloway: what is your plan on assessments and apportionments, especially for those churches who for years have declined in their membership, and let me add, who have struggled to meet their annual assessments?
Well, I come from Mississippi. And I pastored my very first church. Hall's Chapel had two churches, Hall's Chapel and Shiloh. And they were both out in the country. Hall's was in the city of New Albany, and the other one was out in the rural part of New Albany. And each church had about 10 members. But yet we had a budget far exceeded that. And my thing is that I know the struggle. I've seen the pain, because I had to try to raise a budget with only 10 members. But I believe that we know that finances are important in our church, But I believe that we would have to redraw the measurement, the tool that we used for assessments. I believe that, when our forefathers came up with this plan for our church, it was needed because there was no other means to get monies without taxing the church. But I believe that with all of this technology, all of this all these creative minds, that we have to put people in place who can do community development, economic development, and we have to tap into those resources to bring revenue into the church. Because even where I personally serve, a church in Pine Mountain, Georgia, St. John, church had a bunch of young people. When I got there, a beautiful church paid for, but it's only a handful of members. And then they struggle. They struggle trying to raise the proportionment. And they do it because they love the church. So we have to find ways to have other ways to bring revenue into the church without taxing the people, because everybody don't want to leave the church because of budget. But we have to find a way to still make church engaging and we'll let folks be a part of it.
So in light of that, then what are your thoughts on consolidation? Let me see if I can put that question up on the screen. What are your thoughts on consolidation, merging, when it comes to several small struggling congregations? Is that a viable option if you are elected a bishop and assigned to an Episcopal district? And if so, how would you go about managing that process?
Well, certainly, I think those are things that we have to consider. If you're going to be in business, we see it every day in business. And with me having the television show, with me calling sponsors for my show, I know how businesses have merged to make it better, bigger and better product. And I think the same way we have to do with our church. Some of these churches cannot afford to survive. Some of our churches will not be back after this pandemic, but yet they have properties. So we've got to find a way to be able to bring these struggling congregations together and just try to compromise with them and say, well, let us sell the property and then we all can benefit from this. And we just know, just like in business, you would not have a business in business if it's not surviving. And I think that's what we have to come to in our church. We have to understand that some small churches cannot even afford to pay pastor salary. You are a graduate, seminary graduate. I'm a seminary graduate. And unfortunate, we don't have enough churches to adequately pay salaries for all of our seminary graduates. So I believe that if we merge some churches, brought some churches together, and then we can pair them with pastors to help them be successful. And then that way they can be able to pay a pastor's salary and raise budget. I think Reverend Jordan did that in Central Georgia with Warner Roberts CME Church. He merged that church with, I think it was 3 other churches that came together to merge. And so we know that in some of our areas, we know that people are dying. We know that they have died out in a sense, and people are not coming back to those areas. One of my biggest, I'm not gonna say disappointments, but I think one of my heartaches was when I was sent to pastor our church there in Macon, Hosey Temple. My heart really went out to that congregation. Beautiful structure, but nobody was there. The church is in the city of downtown Macon, but nobody lives in downtown Macon anymore. And then I believe that church, that congregation could have survived or could be much more thriving had they merged with some other churches there in Macon. Macon is a beautiful city, beautiful place to be. But I think that we need to, or we should have looked at consolidating some of our churches in that Macon area, because we don't have enough to sustain. Like I said, I pastor Holy Temple, beautiful church, but nobody is there, and their budget was high. Their proportion was high. They're trying to pay the pastor's salary. But again, I believe that if we could have looked at merging or relocating that church, it could be a better church. And no, not throwing shade on Hosey there, but that's why I pastor, and I know the people there. Good people, love God, love the church. But it's just that there's nobody there. And that's the case with a lot of our churches. They're empty on Sunday mornings. And we've got to figure out a way to merge them if we're going to be relevant wherever we are as a church, as the whole church.
Thank you. Thank you. Here's another question that I've asked all of the candidates. If is the bishop in the CME church the pastor's pastor? Why or why not? And let me give you the second part of that. If the bishop is the pastor's pastor and you elected, please explain your plan for guiding your pastors to spiritual, emotional, physical, and financial health.
Well, the bishop is the pastor's pastor. And I believe that the bishop have to know the pastor. I got my master's in theology, but also in pastoral care. And I believe that the bishop should have the pulse of his pastor, because if the pastor is not successful, then that church is not going to be successful. And then that's going to be reflected on that bishop, in my opinion, of not being successful in the area as in the eyes of the people. So I believe that your bishop should be your pastor. He should be concerned about you, because if you're not well mentally, physically, or spiritually, then you cannot serve. And then that's going to be a reflection of your work. You know what I'm saying? And I believe that if you're going to be a bishop, you have to know your pastors. You have to have a relationship with your pastors. And I think that it's good to know them and visit a church, because if you're going to expect pastors to be around in December, but you have no relationship, you've not spoken to them, and then when they are not around in December, that is a reflection upon them not being successful in your eyes. But I believe that if you have a rapport with your pastor and they tell you what's going on here, and then you work with that pastor and that congregation to see what can we do to make this church successful, because if you're not successful, then we're not successful. And the goal is for all of us to be successful in the body of Christ. And I believe that if you're going to serve this present age, you're going to have to be hands-on with the people, hands-on with your pastors, even though we do have presiding elders. But I believe that the buck stops with the bishop. It doesn't stop with the presiding elder. The presiding elder does not make the appointment. He might make recommendations, but the bishop makes the appointment, and the bishop has to know the pastor. And you have to make sure that your pastor is stable, like I said, physically, financially as well, because you don't want a struggling pastor, because that leads to other things, and so you want to make sure that you have a good relationship with your pastor and be able to dialogue one-on-one with your pastor.
Exactly. We have a question to you from Star Right. You talked about your emphasis in technology. What are the other issues that you are concerned with as it relates to the church?
Well, I'm very concerned with the church as a whole, with the, as you say, about the relationships, pastor-bishop relationships, because I just think that a lot of times that there is a miscommunication there somewhere. And I've talked to pastors and some of them feel that way. But I want to be able to open the door and let the pastors know that I'm a pastor's pastor, because most bishops are pastors first, and I just see that being a disconnect from where I sit. A lot of times people don't have a relationship with the bishop. The only time they see their bishop is at the winter meeting, spring meeting, and that's it. And so I believe that we have to do a better job in communicating with our local preachers, because to whom much is given, much is required. And if we're going to hold them accountable and responsible, we have to know what's going on with them. And that's what I want to be able to do, have a relationship with the pastors and let them know that I'm a bishop's pastor, because I was the pastors first.
Dr. Holloway, talk a little bit about if you are elected and are assigned to the 11th Episcopal District, mm-hmm. the way we are currently structured.
Right.
Talk about your leadership in Africa and how you would address some of the issues and some of the concerns that our brothers and sisters in the continent of Africa have, and what would you do if you are assigned to that area?
Well, I've not been to that part of the country. I've not visited that district, but I believe that, again, you have to have a relationship. You have to know the culture of the people. And the best way to know the culture of the people is that you have to surround yourself with a cabinet of people who know the culture of the people. Because again, you are elected to serve the entire church, no matter where you are. So you have to have a rapport with the people. So you have to go there and you have to develop a rapport. And again, the only way to do that, since I don't speak the language, I don't know the culture, I would have to put together a team of people who are part of the church there and ask them, how can I best serve you? What do you all need from me? How can I help as being your bishop? How can we grow this area? How can we enhance this area? What do you need in a bishop? What do you need from your bishop? What resources can I go back and talk to my colleagues about that will help this region of the country? Because I believe that wherever you serve, you represent the church, the CME church, no matter where you are. And you've got to always be mindful of that we are a global church, but yet we are one church in many locations, many regions. So you have to be able to tap into resources all across the various Episcopal districts to help you wherever you serve, wherever you are. Okay, I can't hear you.
All right. Dr. Holloway, talk a little bit about appointments, your philosophy for appointments. Bishop Lakey says that that's probably one of the most important aspects of a bishop, to make good appointments. And I think Reverend Coleman asked similar, will you uphold appointments that you make? What do you say about appointments and in your purview as a bishop? How important is it, and what's your philosophy behind it?
Well, appointments are important because you want to make sure that you have the right person for the right congregation. And you and I have been in ministry long enough. We know that, in our opinion, we might say every appointment has not been a good appointment. But I just believe that, you have to just trust God and trust the process. And now, will I stick with a bad appointment? Well, you have to ride it out for at least 12 months, I believe. But if it doesn't work within that time, you have to look at it and assess it, But again, you don't know how it will work out, but you're hoping that you can pair the right pastor with the right congregation based on the resource and the information that you have about an area, about your district. You look at your state of preachers, and then you find out which one's a better fit, after collaborating with your presiding elders, especially if you're new to an area, because you don't know who's who if you're new to an area. So you would have to rely on the presiding elders' input initially. But I'm hoping that after 12 months, you would have some idea about the strength and weaknesses of your pastors through various meetings, by what you hear, by what you see, and what you observe. Just like going to a job, new on the job, you promote people within the organization based on their ability. Right.
As a follow-up, Dr. Hollenshed asked the question, what are your views on multi-year appointments for pastors?
Well, I think that's what we need to go to, because being a pastor, when you get a 12-month appointment and you have work to do, work going on, and I think that to be moved after a year, that really hasn't given you enough time to do effective ministry. So I'm totally in favor of giving multiple year appointments, because that's the only way that's going to give the pastor some assurance, and also the congregation that the year a pastor is going to be here. Mm-hmm. And we have seen that in a lot of cases, the churches who've had pastors for a long length of time, those churches have been successful. They've done great work, as opposed to those who are moving every year or every 2 years. And we've seen the instability in the congregation. And I just think that if a pastor knows he's going to be at a place for a while, and the people know he's going to be there for a while, then I believe that they can do much and greater work without the fear of having to be moved,
Right. One final question, and in fact, let me say to those who are watching, you're asking some great questions, and I'm going to make sure that they all get asked. All of the candidates will have some similar questions. Some will have some different questions. So I do see your questions, and we're going to get to to make sure that they are answered and responded to by one or several of the aspirants. Dr. Holloway, at this general conference, we have the Episcopal address coming, history being made with Bishop Teresa Jefferson Snorton presented, and I understand that there's some things that are being included in there that will come. We have a strategic plan. We have the legislative review. We have some issues or concerns about financial aspects of the church that might be addressed. And so how prepared are you to go in and deal with many of the issues? We're assuming all of the aspirants have had a chance to read the material literature, or you're reading it and going through it. But what's your take on the activities of the General Conference ahead as it relates to the church?
Well, I think Bishop Reddick said it best this weekend, is that, we've got 7 days to come together and to vote on some very important matters and discuss some very important matters as it relates to the church. But I believe that we have to look at our strategic plan and just to see, where do we want to take our church? Where do we see our church going after this general conference? Because we have to be honest with ourselves and know that we've got to make some changes. The church cannot be the same. This pandemic has put us in a whole different light when it comes to doing ministry. And so we've got to be creative. We've got to find ways to enhance our church. We cannot do business as usual. We cannot continue to follow the same paradigm, if you will, and we've got to just find ways to involve more folks in this process, because when we come to the general conference, we make rules, we make regulations, we raise the budget and all this kind of stuff. And it goes back to the local church. But we have to be very intentional while we're here to make sure that the things that we see in the strategic plan, and ask ourselves truthfully, can we actually implement this? Will this actually make our church better? When I go back to my local church, how would this impact that small congregation down there in South Georgia? That's that small congregation in Mississippi, Louisiana? Because whatever we do here affects the entire church, wherever you are. And we have to be mindful of that and know that it's not a one size fits all, model anymore. We've got to make sure that we're able to implement plans and things that we can also fit the area, fit the region, fit the congregation, because all things are not for all people. And we have to be very intentional about that. People, they elect us to come to the general conference to look at their best interest and to handle the business and the affairs of the church. And every delegate and alternate have, you have a responsibility to make those tough decisions. It is your responsibility to make the best vote count, because that's why you were duly elected by each region that you represent. They trust you to do the right thing. They trust you to make the right decision, because they can't do it. They were not elected. You were. And I believe that we have to come together as a team while we're there and make sure that we're doing the best thing to move our church forward, to be able to serve this present age.
So I'm going to give you now an opportunity to make your closing statement to the delegates who are watching and who will be casting a vote for a bishop at the General Conference. A couple of things, let me just mention. Gregory Lewis, lay leader of Georgia, said leadership requires energy. Do you feel that you have the energy to lead effectively? I'm just listing a couple other questions that you didn't get a chance to respond. Younger preachers who don't want to travel once they are ordained. And I think that, I think, as you make your closing statement, your argument, if you will, as to why the delegates should select you, put you on the bench in 2022 to serve as our church. So I'm going to give you full screen and give you a minute or two to close out and to make your case uninterrupted by me. So God bless you, Dr. Billy Holloway.
Well, again, Dr. Mason, thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for this platform. And I'll just say to all the delegates and alternates, you have a responsibility to elect the best persons for the job. You know, I've been in ministry for over 20 years. I've also ran businesses, you know, while I'm doing ministry, should I say. And I just believe that time has come for us to elect people who can move our church and not be part of the status quo. I have a television show that reaches over 2.5 million people. That takes challenge. That's challenging to do. And the stamina, the energy to pull together a weekly television show, to get sponsorships, to get people to tune in, to get people to support the show, that takes work. And I'm willing to work. I'm willing to work for our church. I've sat on these sidelines and I have seen our church. And I believe that now is the time to take what God has given me. This church has trained me. I came here in 1997 to attend seminary, and I've been here ever since, working with the church, throughout the church in various capacities. I've served several areas in the 6th Episcopal District, being from Mississippi. And you know, Mississippians, you know, we like hard work and we stand up to a challenge. So I'm challenging you. If you want somebody innovative, somebody who can bring technology, somebody who can bring people skills to the bench, somebody who you can relate to, somebody who you can have a dialogue and a conversation with, and somebody who knows business. And we have to bring people to the bench who knows the business of the business. It takes a business-minded person to run a corporation. That's what the church has become. The church has become a corporation. And we've got to bring people who can bring innovative ideas to find out ways how we can tap into other resources, how we can use community development, how we can bring sponsorships to help sponsor our church at major events like in Cincinnati, you know. And that's what I bring. I bring a wealth of knowledge. I'm a philanthropist. I know all the philanthropists here in the Atlanta area. And I know others all across the country who are willing to help our church, who are willing to make contributions to our church. And again, I want to see our church grow. I want our church to go beyond the 4 walls. I want folks to, when they walk downtown Atlanta, they can see a billboard and say the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. You know, I want to be able to identify who we are. And again, that's what I want to bring to the church. I want to be the marketing guru for our church. And I want to do that. I want to highlight small churches, large churches, every congregation all across the country, and let folks know that we are proud to be CMEs.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We have spent some time with Dr. Billy Holloway of the Billy Holloway Show, preacher and pastor. We thank you for answering the questions and for sharing your vision, for sharing your platform, and what you would do if you are elected. And we pray God's blessings on you. And hang around for a while. We're going to hear the other aspirants as well. And I'm telling people, thank you so much, Dr. Holloway. I'm sorry. We are delighted to have him and the others that are coming. We're going to be here for a minute. So, you know, if you need to fix your plate and get your evening tea or communion, do that and enjoy. We want to spend some time with these candidates and give them an opportunity to share their thoughts, because I believe, in my opinion, all Episcopal elections have been critical at that time, and certainly this election is extremely critical in the life of the church. I am delighted to bring up Pastor Cassandry Keys to come and to share with us, former presiding elder. I think she chairs the ministers and lay. She'll tell us about that as well. But Pastor Keys, so glad to have you here with us. You've been active in the church for a long time. You've been around, you've seen things, you witnessed things, and you decided, or God put in your heart, to offer yourself as an aspirant. So tell us why now, and what do you bring to the bench? And what kind of bishop will you be if you are elected by the delegates in a couple of weeks? Unmute yourself.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mason, for this platform, and thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak for myself, because I am of age. And you're right, I've been around for quite a while. For 29 years, I have been a pastor in this church. I've served under the leadership of five bishops, 5 Episcopal districts, and 16 churches. And when you ask why now, that's a good question. I had to ask myself that. But the same question I had to ask myself when I finally decided to accept the call to preach. I didn't want to be no preacher. But when God calls, you have to answer. And when God called and said this was the next step, my words to God was, prepare the way and I will follow. My goal is to always be in the will of God and only be where God wants me to be. Now, what do I bring to the table? I bring a commitment to God, a commitment to ministry, and a commitment and determination to see people transformed and liberated. If it's not about transformation, if it's not liberating, then guess what? It is then putting people in bondage. And while our church may have had its roots coming out of slavery, we don't still have to maintain that slavery mentality. I will be free, and anybody around me gonna have to be free. That's basically how I can hear you.
Amen, my sister. Let's get right into the questions.
Yes, sir.
And what I want to do is to begin with some of the questions that some of our viewers have asked, because I'm always grateful for them tuning in. I don't have the name, but one of the questions that has come up: what do you think about joining some churches that are struggling and have a pastoral staff on the payroll to be a part of a pastor's team?
That is an innovative idea. I'm of the opinion that our churches are where they are not by accident or chance. That God has allowed a church to be planted there, and if they are struggling, then one of the beauties about being CME or in a community is that a church should not be struggling by itself, but a church that is actively engaged in the community and not just focused on checking boxes and just showing up on Sunday, but really engaged in the community. Then whatever struggles they're having is mitigated by them engaging in the community, tapping into resources. There are so many needs in our community. And my book, Are You Ready to Grow, gives churches strategic ways to be able to find out how do you fit where you are. And so when we talk about merging churches, or pastoral staff and all of that, we've got to look at the context. We've got to look at the culture and see, it might work in this area, but we're not a cookie cutter church. So what works in one area may not work in another area. Everything has to be evaluated, strategically planned out. But ultimately, who is transformed by it, who is liberated, and who's put in bondage by it? And if we are putting folks in bondage, I ain't in there.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about several questions have come up about appointments, which is a major responsibility of a bishop. One of the most important, if you really want to put it on the table. Someone has asked about multi-year appointments, your philosophy on appointments. How will you go about selecting preachers and pastors for appointments? Someone said, are you supportive of receiving input from members of the congregation and assisting you in appointments? So talk about, if you will, and then let me put this up as well, because they're all tying together, and retired pastors. How do you feel about retired pastors continuing to pastor churches when you have seminary trained pastors appointed to smaller charges? So the issue is, Pastor Keys, what will be your philosophy and your guiding drive as you are making appointments if you are elected bishop?
Thank you for that. That's a very good question. First, let me point that I believe that being a bishop is an administrative position. A bishop is one who basically sets the vision and then allows others to run with it. Having served as presiding elder and then having served as administrative assistant to several presiding elders, I began to see the importance of how the role of being a presiding elder is to the bishop. And when we talk about bishops make appointments on the advisement of presiding elders. Somewhere along the line, we have negated the role of presiding elders and made them check collectors rather than handling the position of, one, knowing who the pastors are, knowing the condition of the congregation. Because when you put a pastor and a church together, it's like a marriage. And if it doesn't fit, we can't force it. And sometimes people have been forced to stay together just because, either the pastor needs a salary or, for whatever reason. But the bottom line is, when we are putting people together, it's like a marriage, and there's got to be some evaluation. Last general conference, I put in several resolutions of evaluations that would basically do an assessment, not only of the pastor, but the congregation also. And the more we can begin to see what we have, what is needed, we can better match them together. I hope that significantly answers your question, because basically for me, it's going to be people coming together. And I like the parish committee thing, that we cannot continue to operate in a vacuum, that a bishop is one person, but to be over an entire Episcopal district, you can't see everything. And that's why you put people, you must have people on your team collaborate with others that can see what you can't see. I have no disillusion that if I'm elected bishop and I'm sent to an Episcopal district, that I know everything that Episcopal district needs. Even having been in the church 29 years, there's still some stuff I don't know about the church. And I rely on elders who've been around. And I thank God for those that continue to pour into me and mentor me, those who have gone on and those who picked up the mantle after somebody died or whatever, that continue. We have to have an ear to hear and eyes to see and recognize that we don't know it all, but together we can be the change we want to see.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's get into the nuts and bolts of this general conference. A lot's going on, as I mentioned, with Dr. Holloway. You got the strategic plan. You got the pending Episcopal address. You have, which includes a proposal maybe of an additional Episcopal position. You have the legislative review. You got some issues and challenges we're hearing dealing with finances. What do you come into the general conference with? You coming in as a pastor, but also as an aspirant. What must we do? What do you feel are some of the priorities of our church from your lens as an Episcopal aspirant?
Well, I'm not just a pastor or aspirant, but I'm a woman, and I'm also the president of the Ministers and Laymen Council. And one of the things that we've been doing as we lead to General Conference is equipping those who will tune in to our workshops with the materials and information, so that we're not just showing up at General Conference and getting some resolutions and just voting based on what somebody told us is a good idea, but to make sure we're fully informed. I strongly believe that an informed church is a strong church and a transformative church. And the fact that we are not really dialoguing about the information, and Bishop Bredick was right yesterday, we don't have enough time to invest in what needs to really discuss each one of those resolutions, all the other issues. And that's why we've got to have the meeting before the meeting. That's where it's always been done. Every church I've ever been a part of, there was always a meeting before the meeting where we discussed the legislation. And when you talk about, all of the various things before us, from the finance, the Episcopal address, and all of that, there are so many things, even along the way of the strategic plan, that were left out. It's as if we got in a vacuum, and some folks say this is what we need, and other voices were left out. And then when they started doing the asking other people, well, you already baked the cake. Now you're gonna ask me what's to be in it? It's already baked. So it comes down to the point is how is it going to take us forward? My campaign has been keys forward. What is strategically about it? They have the discipleship piece of it. Well, discipleship is what we're supposed to be doing anyway. John 15 says we are branches, and that discipleship ought to be our mantra. Why are we putting together a document and a resolution, all this, to tell folks to do discipleship? It seems like somewhere along the way, we've lost our way of who we really are and focus more on money and on position, then we are really about being the people of God and being the light of the world. And so, I'm a pastor at heart and I'm a minister. And I believe that if we want to really see this church change, it's not so much about what we put on paper, because we got a discipline. And there are so many people. We had a workshop last Sunday, that there are a lot of stuff in the discipline that folk don't know. So legislating it is not going to change it. We've got to teach it, and we've got to be intentional about being the change we want to see.
Speaking of resolutions, I think you and I serve maybe 2 general conferences on the same committee, going through, what was that, the legal legislative review committee.
Yes,
oh, I'm so thankful, Bishop, I'm not on that committee this year.
Neither am I.
God bless you, Bishop Brown. But anyway, but let's talk a little bit about our young adults. Okay, as a bishop, what kind of bishop will you be as it relates to your plan for making sure that our young adults continue to be actively engaged and involved? And let me add a little to that, to make sure that we don't lose them, because we know that at a certain point in age, many of our young adults are leaving. Talk a little bit about your vision as a bishop as it relates to our young adults.
Young adults are at my heart. And because I started pastoring as a young adult, and I was fortunate enough to be mentored where older clergy and lay in the church took me under their wings and taught me, invested in me. And they would say things like, you're going to need this on down the road. I had no idea years ago that they were conditioning me and preparing me for this day where God would say, now you need to aspire to be a bishop in this church. And having been one of the persons who was selected to participate in Discipleship 2000, which was a vision of Bishop Ronald Cunningham, who at that time was General Secretary of Christian Education, it grieves me now to know that our class was the only class, because talking with some of my classmates who were part of Discipleship 2020, where we were basically being positioned to take leadership by 2020. Ironically, I announced that I would aspire to be a bishop in 2020. And it didn't dawn on me until some other classmates said, that's what they prepared us for. But each one of us were giving tools and equipment by leaders of this church that prepared us to move forward in ministry. And to not have that continue on now and other young adults be equipped with that, to even treat young adults as if they're second class or not really grown folks. I was 19, bought my first house when I was 21. And while I know some folk older than me still ain't bought their first house. But the thing is that we've got to recognize they bring to the table so many things. And in my vision, the younger generation and our elders are the parenthesis of the church. How we treat them and how we invest in them will determine if we got anything in the middle. Either we're going to be a solid organization or we're going to be a donut with jelly filled. Because if the parenthesis, if the elders and our young adults are not taken care of, it only takes one little push. When you fill a donut with Jell-O, you just push through and it just falls apart. We've got to be better about. You asked me earlier about senior retired pastors continue to pastor, but I think the problem is that we have not been intentional about mentoring and passing the baton. All of my sons and daughters ministry, I always tell them, I'm teaching you everything I know, everything I got, you can have it, because I expect for you to replace me. I ain't doing this all my life. Somebody else going to take my place, and I want to sit and watch them. And some of our senior pastors have not, maybe they've not been positioned themselves to pass on to somebody else. And then we got this issue with the retirement that, there's some serious issues with our retirement where some of our pastors have not, don't have anything to live off of, that they see out the pastor just so they can have be able to eat every day and buy groceries.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your response to that question. So I want to talk a little bit about your thoughts on consolidation, merging of churches. What are your views on it? And also, what are your thoughts, or have you given thought on an effective plan for church planting? So talk about those areas from the perspective of your lens, Pastor Keys.
Oh, I'm yeah. This you're in my sweet spot now, because when the church that I joined, the CME church in, was Hebron CME, and down the road was Anders, and right on down the road was Cedar Hill. 3 small churches that basically were all family members, just right down the road from each other in Mississippi. And then Bishop Hoyt at the time was trying to figure out what to do with these churches. And I was a part of the committee, the team that helped pull together a plan to do it. And those churches were merged together. And one of the sons of the church still pastored that church. They built a new church. A wonderful thing can happen with that when the people have a mind to work, as in Nehemiah. Now, merging churches ought to not to be about selling property. One of the wealths of the Black church is that we owned our own land. And I'll bring it a little bit home. The CME church, our inheritance is that we were birthed out of slavery, where the Methodist Episcopal Church basically gave us our own church, and then also provided us with resources that we got a head start. Other Methodist denominations, they were birthed out of they protested. They walked out and they had to start from scratch. But we got a head start. And I often wonder, and it's that if you have my book, Are You Ready to Grow? In the beginning introduction, it always dawned on me, if we got such a head start, what happened? What was it why did we get stagnant? Why did we stop the movement westward and all the territories we got in certain areas, and we just got satisfied with just what we have? I pastored a church called Zion Hill. Zion Hill was in a community where at one time a lot of Black folks lived. Everybody moved out. Wasn't nothing out there then but some squirrels and birds, and they lived in the church. I pastored that church for 3 years until we closed it. And once we closed that church, unfortunately, no other church in Chula, Mississippi, CME Church, has been put there because we didn't have a vision for planting. Now, when we talk about planting, I was fortunate. My first year seminary, when I came to Atlanta to be at ITC, initially, Presiding Elder Woodford took me to a church, met folk, and told me, this way you're going to pastor. But the day of annual conference, just before Bishop Lakey read appointments, he said, well, Bishop Lakey got to get that church to somebody else. We're gonna find something else for you to do. And then Bishop Lakey asked me, he said, I need you to go to Duluth. We're trying to start a church there. I'm a first-year seminarian going to start a church. And I'm thinking, oh, they sending me to start a church. They're going to give me resources. Hold up. I didn't get no money. Didn't get just, we're in. Now, I thank God for my Presiding Elder Woodford. He did help out. But having to go to a church with my family, new into a city, and plant a church made me wonder, are we really serious about planting? My ecumenical friends who have gone and planted churches, before they plant a church in the area, you see billboards go up and say, coming soon. Yet they send pastors there to go and start Bible studies and meet with community leaders, and they make a presence there. We don't have a vision for planting. We just talk about doing it, but are we really serious? And I believe to be serious about it, we got to put our money where our mouth is. Matter of fact, your bottom line, when we look at our financial statements, our financial reports, it will tell where our priorities are. How much money are we spending on youth and young adult ministry, children's ministry? How much money is put into evangelism and missionary? Really, if our bottom line says that we are more invested in other stuff, then we ain't really about church business. We just want to be a place to socialize.
Thank you so much, Pastor Keys. If you're elected, you may be assigned to Africa, to the 11th Episcopal District. And so, because we have quite a number of our wonderful brothers and sisters who watch, who tune in real time. Talk about your ministry and leadership, should you be elected and be assigned, and how you will approach the challenges and issues and embrace our brothers and sisters on the continent.
Thank you so much. Now, those who know me that I'm going to always be me. It's taken me 50 years to learn how to be Cassandry. I'm going to be Cassandry. I stated earlier about in 1870, the CME Church was started. And the CME Church, our progenitors, went to the Methodist Episcopal Church leadership and asked for a church. We were given this church. And once they set us up, do you know that they didn't make any demands that we had to report to them every year, that we had to come back to their meetings? I'll take it a little bit further. When John Wesley came to America and declared the Methodist Church in America, there was no mandate that we come to England for general conference. But he set us up with the tools to have our own conference. God has blessed us to plant churches, to start ministries, to watch the 11th and even the 10th to thrive and grow. But I believe to whom much is given, much is required. If by God's grace I'm assigned to 11th, my assignment will be to prepare them for liberation, that they then can become the CME Church in Africa.
All right. What do you consider to be the top 3 priorities for the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church?
The top 3 priorities is, first, we've got to really define who we are. There was a time, I believe, when I joined the church, my father-in-law was presiding elder. He had a bumper sticker that said, "Proud to be CME." By the time I got engaged in it, I tried to figure out what's to be proud of. And oftentimes we don't know who we are. We've got to really, we're nostalgic about our history, but not really understanding who we are in this present moment. Then do we really have a vision for our future? And 1 or 2 people knowing who we are doesn't help when we are a church scattered all over this country. Today is Pentecost. And the way the Spirit did was to do what Jesus had told them to do, that you be my witness to the utmost part. The Holy Spirit had to push them out. Maybe COVID was a type of movement of the Spirit that pushed us out of buildings where we are now having to engage in other areas. And so what the bottom line is that our top 3 things is, first, we've got to become true to who we are. Are we about ministry? Are we about monetary? Now, don't get me wrong. I know it takes finances in order to do ministry, but everywhere I've pastored churches where I didn't get a salary. I've pastored churches where I had to get a second job to take care of it. But when we invest in who we are and we let other folks know who we are, you do ministry, what the resource you have will come to us. So we've got to define who we are. We've got to be serious about discipleship. And then we've got to be serious about expansion. And if we do that, we are poised to be the Methodist Church, a picture for all other Methodist churches. Say, hold up, we lost our way because we got stuck in this place.
Thank you. A couple of more questions for you. As one who aspires to the office of bishop in the CME Church, what is your plan for empowering local congregations for effective ministries? And I'm going to put one of those areas up. B, leveraging resources, human, financial, intellectual of the Episcopal district to assist local churches.
Now, you do know this is one of my points on my keys forward is to effective stewardship, that we make sure that we're not just taking in, but that we are able to give out. And we talk about human, financial, intellectual. I don't believe that people are members of the CME Church by accident. And there are some amazing folk in our church that are doing amazing things outside of the church. And I always wonder, whenever I go to the church, I tell folks, I don't have bench members. Whatever you're doing outside of the church, God has gifted you with that so that you can do it in the church. God has equipped you. We've got to learn how to get out of this buddy system or this nepotism or having folks around us that's going to always say yes and do what we want. I don't need people around me that's going to go along with everything I say. I need fresh ideas, because what I can't see and somebody else can see, God will give them vision to come. And then collaboratively, we can come together. So when we talk about human, financial, intellectual, there's more money in this church than we imagine. When we talk about some churches are struggling, listen, the reason they are struggling is because we're not adequately being good stewards of what God has put to us. We've had all these quadrennials. We know we got some money, There's some stuff we can do, but are we being good stewards over it?
Thank you very much. Let's see, the last question that I'm going to ask you, and then I'm going to give you a chance to make your case to the delegates. So I don't think I've asked this question to you, but I always like to ask each aspirant about is the bishop in the CME church the pastor's pastor? Why not? And if the bishop is the pastor's pastor, and if you are elected, explain your plan for guiding your pastors that will be under your charge to spiritual, emotional, physical, and financial health.
Thank you for that question. Is the bishop the pastor's pastors? Why or why not? I'm going to say no. The bishop is not the pastor's pastors. The bishop is the Episcopal leader's vision caster. Presiding elders are pastor's pastors because they are there on the ground to be able to be hands-on with them and to understand. Now, the presiding elder then will report to the bishop, and then the bishop's responsibility is to make sure that resources and whatever pastors or congregation need, they're finding ways to make sure they are there by connecting with other entities. If bishops spend all their time trying to micromanage, then you really can't do the operation that you're assigned to do. So if your hand got to touch everything in order for something to happen, you ain't really going to do much. But I thank God that I know how to use other folks' hands to expand my reach.
So talk about, Pastor Keys, what kind of bishop will you be as it relates to your pastors? If your elders are the pastor's pastor and you're leading and managing and guiding, talk about, what you will do under your leadership to ensure that your pastors are on a good track for spiritual, emotional, physical, and financial health.
One, that we will have a spiritual wellness assessment. And I will start with those who are closest to me, which will be the presiding elders or whatever those are, making sure they're equipped to then carry it down. The anointing flows downward. So once I have done what I can with those that are in my inner circle, then my expectation is that they take it to theirs. And the more pastors are empowered, then congregations are empowered, and empowered congregations make empowered communities. And you can't help but flourish when you begin to operate that way. And so as a bishop, everything that I've done as a pastor, as a presiding elder, I didn't ask you to let me do something different, just to continue to be who I am, but with greater reach, wherein I can then empower others to be the light that God has called us to be. I'm proud to be CME, and I'm excited about what God is getting ready to do in this church.
Amen. And in that light, if you would close out and make your case to the delegates that are watching now, those who will be watching, as we are only 20 days away from the General Conference, as to why they should entrust you to the position and cast your vote to be a bishop of the CME Church for such a time as this. Pastor Cassandry Keys.
Thank you, Dr. Mason, and thank all of you that are listening. And those, let me be as honest as I possibly can be. You know me. You know that I tell you exactly what I'm feeling. And you also know that I care about this church. I care about communities. I care about people, no matter what your age or social location or your education. I care because somebody once cared for me. Our family, the CME family, and the body of Christ is in crisis. I am fully aware of the immense weight and awesome power of the episcopacy. Hear me clearly. The job is hard. It requires clear-headed judgment, a moral compass, personal integrity, an ability to listen, and an abiding belief that each person that makes up the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, clergy and laity, seniors, elders, educated, uneducated, wealthy, or those impoverished, each has value not predicated on their social location or economic ability. The boundary lines have fallen to us in pleasant places. We have a good heritage. Our children, our youth are counting on us to bequeath to them a church grounded in Methodist tradition, devoted to the Christian faith, determined to transform the community for God's glory. And I'll say to you this, that this is not the first time the body of Christ has been in this. Matthew 16:19 records the response of Jesus to his disciples who were struggling to envision the way forward. In God's church, they didn't know what to do. There was Jesus telling them he's getting ready to go and all the things that are going to happen. But when they came to that point, this is what Jesus said to them. He gave them these simple words. He says, I will give you the keys. I say to you, my sisters, my brothers, listen, in this church, in this season, the keys forward, I believe God has equipped me with keys that can take us forward. Not just my last name, but with all of the various ways that have been invested in me, that we can go forward with accountable leadership, biblical stewardship, and Christian discipleship. God has a plan for us. We're not here by accident or chance, but God wants to use us. And I am making myself available to say, use me. And if you want the keys to go forward, then if it's in your power to vote, then you need to cast a vote for keys, June 29, 2022. And if you don't have a vote, then you need to tell somebody else who is voting, look, I need you to do something for my church. I need you to do something for my community. We need change and we need to move forward. And I will be a voice for those who feel that they have no voice. I want to be a part of the change that we've been waiting to see. Thank you, Dr. Mason.
And thank you so much, Pastor Keys. And may God continue to bless your journey. As I've said to all of the candidates and all the shows, I just pray for you. You know, you all put yourselves out there for scrutiny and, you know, aspiring for this position. And I know it's a journey. I'm sure you all are tired, but you're running on. Thank you so much for sharing with us, and just hang around if you can. Yes. And if not, I understand it's been a long day. But we're so glad to have you on, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you very much, and see you in a few days.
All right, absolutely. That was Pastor Cassandry Keys. Delighted to have her with us today. I also want to share, take a quick break if you need to, because I got two more great aspirants coming. Presiding Elder Paris J. Lester and Pastor Marvin Charles Liu, our Executive Secretary, Dr. Panay Woods, asked me to share this message with you. Everyone, please watch for the text message to each registered delegate this week regarding 42 chat for uploading vaccination records. And if you have registration issues, please reach out to the Office of Executive Secretary at CME Executive Secretary 4@gmail.com or 901-489-9253. This is an important announcement because you need to make sure that you get it uploaded. I tried this week, had some problems, but they were very prompt. Dr. Panay responded back to me, because you don't want to be standing in a line at the convention center trying to get your COVID credentials and vaccination cleared. Let's get this done. So I'll try to make this scroll, so if you have problems, you can contact her as well. We are delighted to have with us today the distinguished pastor of the great Mount Olive in Memphis, Tennessee. In fact, it was at Mount Olive some over 60 years ago, 65 years ago, in 1954, where the name of the church from colored to Christian took place. Yes, and Reverend Lester pastors that, and just delighted to have him on this evening. I'm sure he screamed and shouted this morning because today was Pentecost Sunday.
Hallelujah.
I know. But glad to have you on, my good friend and brother. And I'm so thankful to be friends with all of the aspirants today. That's a blessing. I count it a joy. Reverend Lester, this...
Peris Lester.
Peris.
You know how we do it, Skip.
I know. But you have offered yourself as a candidate,
yes, sir.
For this season, and tell us why now, and why should the church put you on a bench? What do you bring to the College of Bishops for such a season as this, by way of your opening statement?
Let me first of all say thank you, my good friend and brother, Pastor Herman Skip Mason, for all the work that you do. And I continue to say that the other Skip that omitted us in the CME history on the History Channel, we thank God for our Skip Mason, who always continues to lift us up. I am Peris Lester. Yes, I am offering myself as a candidate for bishop in the CME Church. I believe that God has called me for such a time as this to continue to carry out the great work of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. I was born and raised in the CME Church and been in the CME Church my entire life, and God has blessed me in the CME Church. And I really feel like I owe so much to the church because the church has done so much for me. I'm grateful to have the testimony that I not only attended the CME Church, but I'm a graduate of 2 HBCUs, and both of them are CME institutions, Lane College and Phillip School of Theology. So I'm CME through and through, and I want to get to the bench to help continue the great legacy of our church. Our bishop here, Bishop Williamson, says that our church is about salvation, education, and liberation. And I want to continue to lead in that form as a bishop in the church. We have awesome persons who get offering themselves, but I just feel like God has called me to do it at this time that we would make the difference. One thing about me offering myself for bishop is that COVID has taught us a lot, that we've got to be willing to recognize that there's a shift that's taking place, and we have to be able to be ready for that shift. And I believe that will bring so much to the bench to help us in making the shift as we continue to do the great work that God has called for us to do.
Thank you so much, Peris. Let me ask you, let's start with Africa, because if you are elected, it's a possibility that you could be assigned to the 11th Episcopal District. Talk about your vision for Africa, how you would approach it, how you would engage with our brothers and sisters on the continent, and encourage them as they are staunch CMEs as well.
Well, first of all, I'd be so excited to be elected. I would be happy to go anywhere, but I would take on the opportunity to go there and serve in the mother country. I think as a part of our responsibility as African Americans, that we do need to go back to help our brothers and sisters in Africa. I know with you being a historian, the reason why we're over here is because many of our ancestors sold us out, and that's how we ended up getting sold into slavery. But here's an opportunity, I believe, for us to continue to go back and do great work there. Many of our sisters and brothers over there in the motherland are struggling. And we here in America are probably one of the blessed group of Africans who have been blessed by God. And I believe that we could go back and carry a wealth, but also we can go back and learn so much about our culture, learn so much what it means to work in that great continent. I would definitely reach out to persons like Bishop Carter, our senior bishop, Bishop Reddick, and those who worked that area before, Bishop Jefferson Norton, those who really worked in that area, to learn and glean from them. Also, persons like Dr. Taylor and others who've gone over there and worked with our sisters and brothers in the 11th district so that I could be a better, effective leader. But also wanted to bring my own personality and recognizing how can we help them, not just, I think sometimes we make them an afterthought, but how can we really include our sisters and brothers and being a part of the CME Church? One thing, learning their names, learning how to pronounce their names, learning what their names mean. And, you know, even growing up, I searched for a while in my own pathway. Bishop Williamson became my pastor. I was 15. But growing up in Chicago, I was listening to voices like Minister Louis Farrakhan, like Reverend Jeremiah Wright, like Reverend Jesse Jackson. These persons were talking about Africa and hearing about Africa, and even thinking about what does it mean to change my name? You know, what does it mean to have an African name? But, you know, when my mom, she died, I was a year old. I just felt like I need to keep this name, even though I didn't really care for Peris. I thought it was a girl name, but hey, I thank God for it. But going over there to really work with them, but also learn from them how to be a better pastor, to be a better bishop, and also for us to be a better church.
You have had a chance, I'm certain by now, to peruse the strategic plan, the legislative review. You've heard some other things that might be coming to the conference, to the floor. We're looking forward to the Episcopal address and all. Hearing all of those things, what do you consider to be the major issues or priorities that are affecting our church? And if elected, how will you address some of those?
Well, I know one thing we're definitely going to need is a way in which we can reach people. At Mount Olive, where I serve, I know one thing that we're trying to do is what I'm calling or electronic evangelism, that we need to reach people. And I thank God for you using this as a platform to reach people. Many of our churches, not just CME, but churches, period, are dying. There's a lot of falling away from persons who are no longer engaged in the church. As a matter of fact, I think it's George Barner who says in his research that we're at a critical point where a lot of our young adults are what they're calling none. There's no affiliation, no church affiliation, no religious affiliation. So I think as a bishop, to meet with those pastors and leaders to see how can we effectively engage people, because I think that and I know that we have the best thing that the world needs, and that is a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. But how do we make that relevant for us today? The late Bishop Dottie Ice used to say to us when I was in the 3rd Episcopal District, there is no sinner shortage. But how do we reach people so that they can see that having a relationship with Jesus Christ makes a difference? And then how can we disciple the ones that we already have so that they can go out and also witness to others? There's a lot of biblical illiteracy in our church. How do we get people to learn more about the Bible and effectively know how to share their faith? And one good thing I believe that God has done for us, giving us these type of platforms, Facebook and YouTube and the like, it gives us an opportunity for us to reach out to persons. We carry in our hands computers, little phones in our hands. That's an awesome opportunity for us to go out and reach so many, to share the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I believe that one of our areas that we have to do is really work on how do we win souls for Christ. Because when it's all said and done, that's what we say we're here for. That's what we say we were called for. When I accepted my call to ministry, I didn't accept my call to ministry just thinking I was going to be a bishop, but I accepted my call to ministry because I was excited about sharing my faith and reaching souls for Jesus Christ. That's what I want to do. I wanted people to come to the church. I wanted to see lives transformed, lives renewed. I'm in the church because someone shared Christ with me. And I want to make sure that others are in the church and the message does not change, but the methodology has to change. And I think that as a church, there's some different methods that we may have to use to reach people today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We have dwindling membership, struggling congregations. In some churches, there are few men. Our young adults, as they are graduating or leaving and not coming back. Yet there's talk of merging and church planting all in that same breath. So what are your thoughts? You know, what would you as a bishop do to assess situations? Are you in favor emerging, and are you in favor of consolidations as well? How will you help these congregations that are struggling, and continue to struggle? And what kind of bishop will you be as it relates to helping these kind of congregations?
Again, thank you for the question. I think the word now is reimagine. I think some of these churches will definitely have to be reimagined. Yes, some will have to be merged with others. But I think somebody earlier said that, we're in the CME church. In some instances, we may be cash poor, but we're land rich. So what can we do with the land that we own to reimagine these churches where we ask them to come together and merge? But maybe the other properties can be reimagined as a shelter, as a drug rehabilitation center, using these properties, or even a community garden, some type of way in which we can reimagine the properties so that it could bring in resources. And also, as we talk about reaching men, what we've been doing for the last couple of months at Mount Olive, we have a Boys to Men ministry every month on Saturdays. I know we're reaching men, you have to keep them engaged. Men like to do things with their hands. They like to be engaged in that manner. Men like to go out to ball games and other things, while at the same time we can use that as opportunities to witness and share with them. In our breakfasts, we try to cover different topics: men's health, men's mental state, men's physical, all of these different things that we can talk about along with the men and the boys, but also in reaching our young adults. Again, hearing from them, what is it that they're looking for? How do we reimagine the church so that more young adult families can come in? I know one of the great challenges in the church for me has always been trying to find that medium, especially for those family members that have children, starting a children's church, meeting those needs of those young adult parents who want to come to worship, but they're bogged down with their children and those other things. So I think those are some of the other things that we have to look at as a church. And as a bishop, I want to come along those pastors to help them in coming up with ideas and ways in which we can, again, reimagine the church, not changing our message, but changing our methodology so that we can win those lost for Christ.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's look at this question that was submitted. In lean times, businesses and nonprofits take quick measures to reduce the economic impact of pandemic, trickle-down community financial crisis, dwindling membership. If elected bishop, what is your specific plan to innovate and position the church spiritually, socially, and financially to continue for another 150 years?
Thank you for that question. I think, I can go back to when I served 8 years in Los Angeles, and it was in 2008. We had the crash in the market and things were going down, and we suffered some hardships at Lewis Metropolitan when I served there. And the first thing I did, I took a pay cut. And then we asked some of the other staff to take a pay cut. But after we got back on our feet, we were able to put those cuts back in place so that persons could still receive their salaries. I think that there's certain things, as we talk about positioning ourselves financially, we may need to really examine our budget and find out, well, what is it that we really need? How much money do we really need to operate? What are some of the things that we maybe can trim, or some of the other things that we maybe need to increase? In terms of a spiritual, innovative way, again, helping our church, helping our members become more biblically literate, helping our church become, my platform has been this: prayerful leadership. God, as I pray to God and also listen to God, what are the steps that we need to take to grow spiritually? And also socially, I called you the other week about what we need to do. We were there in Brunswick together with Ahmad Arbery, and I think that socially, the CME Church has always been on the vanguard. We don't necessarily get all the credit, but I know even here in Memphis, the local NAACP chapter started at Mount Olive Cathedral CME Church. So it's always been engaged socially, where we recognize that there's work we need to do. Even now, with all of these killings that are going on with these AR-15s, and I've been saying this, I said this to you earlier, Dr. Skip, that I just want to believe that if Mamie Till Mobley could show her son Emmett Till's bludgeoned body in 1955, and that started the civil rights movement, where Rosa Parks would sit down on the bus, where Dr. King would be engaged and to lead the civil rights movement because she showed her son's mutilated body. And I believe that if one of those parents, and I know it's difficult, not everybody's Mamie Till,
yeah.
But to take that initiative to show that body to say, here's what an AR-15 did to my baby. I believe that we can get some movement in Congress for the world to see. We don't need AR-15s. It's killing our streets. Today at Mount Olive, when I was doing my communion runs, I stopped by a house today. One of the members, her grandson, was murdered last night by a gun. So there's things that we have to not just sit back and pray about, but work hard to see about change. One of the greatest examples of a parent showing their child's bludgeoned body is what God did through Jesus. He showed his son. He was killed. He was murdered. And that brought about salvation. And I think as a church, we have to stand up. We have to be a strong voice. Congress, we need a change on our policies for AR-15. Why is it that you can get bullets and you can't get baby formula? That's a problem. And we as a church, we have to be the voice of the voiceless. We have to be the one. I think it was John Wesley, Father Methodism, says that the world is our parish. Mm-hmm. We're called to pastor the world. Mm-hmm. And that's what I believe, that as a bishop, as a pastor, as a presiding elder, that's my platform, to continue to be engaged and what we can do socially. I think it was the late Bishop Johnson said, the Bible on one hand, the newspaper on the other hand, so that we can address the needs of our people. And I think in doing that, it will grow our church. It will show people that we care.
Well, you bring up a good point. I'm not supposed to be, subjective in this, but you bring up a good point. There is something when we see our Episcopal leaders out in the cut, if you will, active. I can speak for my bishop, Bishop Thomas L. Brown, very visible, very engaged at voting right rallies and other rallies that are taking place in the city. He is there, always on spot. And if he's not able to make it, he'll make sure that some pastors there representing him or others. And I think it says a lot about our church. Yes. And it's so in line with our church's struggle and our church's history, being a part of critical movement. So you brought that up. And I just thought that was something that I hope even at this conference, general conference, we got so much to address, but that we will still remember our social activist roots as we are in the midst of trying to fix, repair, and advance our church forward. So there's a question that came to you that I want to ask, put up on the screen. If elected, and maybe one question after this, I'll let you make your closing statement. If elected, what would your administration do to ensure total fiscal transparency and accountability and stewardship for all Episcopal funds?
Okay, thank you for that question. I would just, show where the money comes in, where it's going out. I mean, we do it at our church at Mount Olive. We do it on the district. We do it here in the First Episcopal District. Is to show, here's what came in, here's what goes out. We owe that to the people, that these were the monies that came in. This is where the money went. One thing about even in our discipline, it shows where all the dollars are to be allocated to show that financial transparency. We at Mount Olive, we're in the midst right now trying to pay off a mortgage. And we've asked persons to give above their tithes and offering so that we can pay off the mortgage. There will be a report that will be given. So we will know who gave, what they gave, and then what we plan to do by paying off our mortgage. So I believe that is something that we almost do, is have total financial transparency.
Thank you so much. We get in so many questions and that's a good thing. I'm going to ask you to make your closing remarks. I just want to put a couple of questions up. Dr. McDuffie talked about addressing financial impact of merging churches other than selling properties. Reverend Coleman, will you address the issue of eternal appointments? I didn't ask you about appointments, your philosophy, because that's one of the most important things that a bishop does, is to make appointments. Are you in favor of multi-year appointments as an Episcopal, as a future Episcopal leader? Let me ask that question.
Well, let me tell you this, Dr. Skip. You know, they say when you go to annual conference, there's always 3 appointments. It'll be a new appointment, a reappointment, or a disappointment. So we know that is a part of the crux of Methodism, that making that appointment. I believe one thing about being a bishop, making appointments, and I've seen many bishops at that time, when it's time to read appointments, they ask for no public demonstration, and to see them having to labor over that, because you have persons, not just that pastor, but many times the pastor's families. You have lives in your hand when you give that appointment.
Yeah.
Again, going back to my platform, that is a prayerful leadership.
Yeah.
Really praying. And also, I love people.
Yeah.
Getting to meet with those pastors, taking the time. Listen, these last 2 weeks, I've been in Portland, I've been in Phoenix, I've been in Augusta. So if I can campaign like this to get bishop, when elected bishop, I want to use that same energy to try and go and visit all of my churches. We'll meet all of my pastors.
Right.
Taking that time. It's effort. I've been calling delegates, I'm still calling. I need your vote. But taking that time to make the call to those pastors, to find out where their strengths and weaknesses are, to really find out, are you happy with your appointment?
Yeah.
But not just the pastors, Skip. Finding out those members, because every church got a pew pastor.
Yeah.
Meeting those pew pastors, how is it going between you and the pastor?
Yeah.
Can we find a way? If it's not work, can we find a way for this to work? And if we cannot find a way, then there has to be a change.
Yeah.
If it's going well, I don't have a problem with a multi-year appointment, because I think it has value, and knowing that the pastor's going to be there, the people know the pastor's going to be there. They are working together. But I think as a part of being a bishop, the work, my travel and all that stuff, it won't stop once I get elected. Yeah. It will just continue to increase.
And increase.
But the same work, the same energy I'm spending trying to become a bishop, I'm going to need that same energy as a bishop.
Right.
To go and reach people, go and talk to people, have my cell phone number, reach me.
Yeah.
Because if I don't want to be bothered, I'll turn it off.
Yeah.
But I will want to be available to be a part. And I operate from this premise, even as a presiding elder. The pastor gets the vision. The pastor gets the vision of the church. Everybody else gets ideas to support the vision. And as a bishop, I'm going to ask the pastor, well, what is your vision for this church? What do you see God doing through you, God leading you with this church?
Right.
And if they don't have a vision, to help them in trying to cast one.
Yeah.
We pray together. We look at the demographics. I've served in 6 of the 11 Episcopal districts, and everywhere I've served before I got there, I did a demographic study. I reached out. Thank God now with technology, you can go on the internet, find out, well, what's the main industry here?
Sure.
Where do people work? Where do people live? What are the things that are transpiring in this community? So then I can actively figure out, okay, here's how we're gonna do ministry here.
Right.
So it's something in taking that, taking my years of experience and sharing it with those pastors, sharing it with the lay person, say, okay, here's what we need to do. I knew when I came to Memphis, this is FedEx country.
Yeah.
I'm not going to preach against FedEx. I'm not going to preach.
No, not at all. And so you had to do your work. Let me ask you now to take a couple of minutes to make your case, which all of you all have been doing all along, but you make your closing statement to the delegates that are watching. God bless y'all for hanging on. I know it's a long evening trying to get through before the game comes on tonight, and we will. We got time, so don't worry about that. And Pastor Lou is coming up next. Make your closing case to the delegates as to why they should elect you as a bishop in 2022.
Again, let me first of all thank you, Skip, Dr. Mason, for having this forum and keeping our church connected digitally as we've gone through this pandemic. Your work is impeccable, and I give God praise for what you are doing and what you continue to do. To all of the delegates, alternates who will be heading to our 2022 General Conference, I am Peris Lester. I ask for your prayers, your support, and your vote. If you want more information, you go to teamlester22.com to get more information about me. But I just want you to know that as a bishop, I'm going to love God and I'm going to love God's people. We'll work together. We'll get things done together. You can check all the churches where I've served. Have I been perfect? The answer is no. But have I done my best as a pastor? The answer is yes. And I believe that as a bishop, I have that same mentality, that same attitude, that yes, we can get this done. Yes, we can make a difference. I know that the struggle is real. There are a lot of problems in the church, but yet there's a lot of greatness in the church. When I talk about being a graduate of Lane College and Phillip School of Theology, I see the impact of conference claims. I received them going to those 2 schools. I see the impact even here in Memphis, Tennessee, at our now College Chapel Connectional Ministry, formerly hospital, where now persons who were homeless, or what they call them now, unsheltered guests, are allowed to have a place to stay. And one of the very few in the country that allows for homeless families to come, single moms, single dads to come, that we're doing ministry. To see as a part of the CME Church, even at our headquarters, it needs a lot of work on the headquarters, but to see 40 African-American businesses that are in business because the CME Church, I see the greatness of our church, and I want to continue that legacy to do great things as a Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. I am Peris Lester. I ask for your prayers, your support, and your vote to be the next bishop in the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. Thank you, Skip, for this opportunity.
Thank you, Peris. I appreciate you. And as I've said to the others, may God continue to bless you and strengthen you during this journey. And I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, brother. God bless you. Well, that was Reverend Peris J. Lester, pastor of Mount Olive in Memphis, Tennessee, presiding elder. And we thank God for him and for him sharing as well. And if you need to take a quick break, do that. Come back quickly, because we have Pastor Marvin, Charles, Lou sharing with us. I think it's Marvin, Charles, Tiger Lou. I need to know what that that tiger. Unmute yourself, Lou.
You know what it is. You one of the ones who helped make sure the tiger. You know what it is.
Lou and I go way back, and I was remember when he was running around Morehouse campus when I was speaking there, trying to be big man on campus and all that. I just didn't get to him in time enough before he
did the right thing. Did the right thing.
But at any rate, Pastor Lou, I'm so glad that I told you about those openings. I'm so glad to have you on, and we're delighted to have you here. There we go, right here. As I have asked the other aspirants, I ask you the same. Why have you decided to offer yourself as a candidate for the College of Bishops now in 2022? And what do you bring to the bench? And this is your opening statement. Then I'll come back and we'll begin our litany of questions.
Well, good afternoon to my brother and my friend for so long to remember, fellow Georgia boy, fellow AT alien. We thank God for you, Dr. Herman Skip Mason, for this opportunity. I am Marvin Charles Lou Jr., and to be honest with you, everybody, this is not something that I thought about last night. This is something that God placed on my spirit years ago. And to even be more transparent, I was supposed to be out on the race in 2020. However, life happened, sickness happened, near-death experiences happened, but then God happened. God healed, God restored, God saved for such a time as this, to let you know that we as CMEs have our turn, have our time, and now our task to win. Authentic worship, influence that impacts communities, and nurture that lets the least lost and left behind know that there is a place for you, not only in the sanctuary, but in the arms of our Lord and Savior, Jesus the Christ. That's why I'm here, to do this thing the right way, to do this thing God's way, to do this thing in such a way that somebody will be able to say, I've seen a man leading a movement that includes me. That's why I'm running, Skip.
Thank you so much, my brother. I appreciate your statement and for sharing that with us today. So what are, in your opinion and in your lens, the major issues impacting our church? And if elected, how are you going to address those issues?
I believe we as a denomination are facing an identity crisis within ourselves, as well as an identity crisis with the greater communities in which we have been intended to serve. What is happening is people are still trying to figure out what CME means. People are still trying to figure out, are we a church or are we a ministry? And we ourselves are doing our best to hold on to what makes us CME. But sometimes what we use to hold on to make us CME is keeping us from doing great witness in the communities in which we serve. Everybody does not know about the Gloria Patri. Everybody does not know about the affirmation of faith in the traditional sense. Everybody does not know you wear white and black and white on first Sundays, but they do know there's a God that's still able to save them, deliver them, heal, and restore them. And once we tell them that story and attract them with that story, then we can teach them what it means to be a part of this part of God's body. Understanding that this is a new paradigm shift in which we're in, not just because of the pandemic, but because of the way culture has changed since we were children, so that we help our present day saints realize if we're going to sing a charge to keep, let's live a charge to keep. To serve this present age is our calling to fulfill.
Let me ask you, Marvin, we have a strategic plan. We have a legislative review. We have a much anticipated Episcopal address coming. And there are many things that will change perhaps the paradigm of our church as we see it now. Are you abreast? Are you on top of some things that are coming that will be happening? And what are your thoughts on it? And this is a question that actually came from someone that is viewing the show today.
Of course, I've had to continue to do my homework, not just during this season, but as you know, as a child of the church, as a student of the church, as a multi-elected and selected delegate to the General Conference. I just love this stuff because I want to see us grow. When we're talking about the possibilities of mergers, I have that has a special place in my heart because while I was in seminary, I was a part of one merger that I was excited about, but ironically, the people were like, okay, that sounds good. And then the next year after I left, they went back to separate congregations. I was excited about us expanding ministries. I was a part of a congregation that went from 2 Sundays to every Sunday, and they continued to work on that. And to this day, they still are doing that. I say all that to say, no matter how strategic our plan is, if it does not connect with the people in which we're serving, we've got to rewrite, rewind, and redo what we thought we were going to do in order to get true progress done in our midst. I need us to be honest with ourselves. Yes, we are a connectional denomination, but we still have individual congregations who are dealing with individual dilemmas that require our undivided attention to them specifically. And once people see that we care for them specifically, then they will be able to say, I'm proud to be a CME because they see the God in me.
Thank you for that response. Talk about, and you brought it up, some of the issues that we are having within the churches. Some churches are still having difficulty with apportionments, meeting their budgets. Youth and young adult inactivity are not returning men in the church. So, those are internal issues that, impact the church. Give your thoughts and share your vision on what you would do as a bishop to try to address some of those issues.
When that season of elevation arises in the next few weeks within a month, I see this. I'm a victim of not having my claims on time for a cold quadrennial. Open book. I pastored a church that I wanted to pastor, not realizing the financial challenges and burdens that have been placed upon it. Yes, we raised more money year after year after year, but that bottom line number did not get met until the assessment was changed, ironically, the year that I left. But I say all that to say we were still able to do ministry. And no, we didn't come up so short that people looked at us like y'all ain't doing anything, but we did come up short. And I'm going to be that Episcopal leader to tell that pastor and that congregation, hey, I've been there. I've been that pastor that has been blessed with strong youth and young adult ministries, but I've also been that pastor that has been blessed with a seasoned saints ministry out of this world because it required that for my congregation in which I've been blessed to pastor to grow. And then with our men's work, as my predecessors who came on before me said, especially my classmate Peris J. Lester, we got to do things that the brothers like to do. And if I'm a man, I love sports. I love talking junk. I love being myself. I love being able to decompress because of the pressures that are placed on me on my day-to-day life. I got to be a provider. I got to be a protector. When can I just be me and kick it with the fellas and say, hey, I love the Lord. He heard my cry, But let's hurry up now because we got a game to watch because of the fact we're bonding. We're bonding.
Yeah. So there is in the legislative review a proposal, a recommendation to take the ministry of men and place it under the lay department. Right now, we know we have the general secretary, and of course, our beloved Dr. Pinkett has served well there. What are your thoughts about that? And I'm only asking as you have shared about bonding with men and ensuring that men are an active part of it. Do you have any thoughts about that proposal that's coming forth?
I do, and it's funny that you bring that up. One of my best friends and twin, if you will, and when this came up on the floor to adopt ministry to men, he gave an impassioned speech about his sons, my nephews, and how he wanted them to see a model of what it looks like for men to be able to be men together in ministry. I do not see the significance except from a financial aspect of making that merger. There are some things worth sacrificing for. We want our men to know that they have life. Our ministry to men is off the chain. It works for us. And perhaps what needs to happen is taking those models of ministry to men that are working in those ministries across the connection, taking them across the connection and say, hey, these are the simple steps we took in order for this to happen. What we have to do before we start cutting everything is evaluating what is impactful and necessary for the here and now, and what will help us build going into the future. What if someone would have said years ago, why do we need a women's missionary society? If we said that right now, Skip, my mama would be the first one on your podcast right now saying, shut your mouth, boy. You walking into dangerous territory. But I say that out of love and respect because one of my spiritual grandmothers was none other than Dr. Thelma Vivian Jackson Dudley, one of the matriarchs of our missionary movement. I say that to say we cannot cut everyone because of a financial issue. We make room for things we believe in. Let's believe in making room for our men so our men can do ministry.
Thank you. Thank you for your response. Let's talk a little bit about Africa. And I did make a commitment that I would ask that to each aspirant because it is very much a part of that. And of course, Reverend Dr. Mary McKinney, who is very active in the 11th Episcopal District, always wants to ensure we have, of course, a couple of our wonderful brothers, preachers running for indigenous. In fact, at the close of this, I hope to share a video from one of the aspirants running. But let's talk about Africa. Very well, you could be elected, you could be assigned to the 11th Episcopal District. How will you approach it? How will you embrace our brothers and sisters? How will you stir the fire of Methodism and church work over in a strange land? And I say a strange land because bishops who are traveling over there have to understand the culture of our wonderful people and the things that they are doing. So what kind of bishop will you be in Africa if you are elected and appointed there?
I'm going to be honest with you. You just said something that made me leap, stirring up enthusiasm and excitement. Skip, you know, one of the things that I thank God for is my gifts in worship, word, and ministry. I believe if you just give me an interpreter, and if the interpreter can catch me in C flat, we're going to shut Africa down.
C flat, huh?
C flat. But in all honesty, I can only bring what I know, and that I know I have a passion for people and love sharing the word of God and hearing the people's response and connecting with them where they are. I'm not going to lie to you. When elected and if sent to the continent, it will be my first time on the continent. So I'm going to need a tour guide, and I'm going to pray before I get on the plane for a spirit of discernment to say, is this the person who wants to see this ministry grow, or is this the person who wants to see themselves grow in a ecclesiastical sense instead of a spiritual sense? I want to be very careful in who I align myself with, because I don't want to insult our brothers and sisters on the continent with someone who does not represent them. And as again, my classmate said earlier, we realize there's an unspoken history between the continent and her children who came over on the slave ships. And I do not want to make that same mistake in reverse and insulting those in the motherland of all creation by imposing my will. The only thing I want to do is tell them, be not dismayed, whatever betide, God will take care of them.
Thank you. Marvin, talk a little bit about appointments, because as it has been stated, that is one of the most important functions, one of the functions. And we've had questions about appointments. Are you in favor of multi-year appointments? So what are your thoughts? How do you approach appointments, pastors, churches, lay, trying to get the right fit for the right church? Just talk a little bit about your thoughts on it.
Well, as native 6th Episcopal district children and preachers and pastors, I think the 6th had to be the model for what ministry needs to look like as far as appointments are concerned. I know you and I and countless others had what were called student appointments, that it was understood we were only going to be here for a season as we were preparing to go. I think, to be very direct with you, I would need to sit down with my presiding elders and say, elders, where are our developmental churches? Where are our churches that are going to require some special attention? And where, and I must say it like this, where are our flagships that must have stability? I'm not afraid of making multi-year appointments. I'm a proponent of it, because in 2022, to still have to worry about, am I going to pastor this same church with this same compensation that I just had a year ago? It is unnecessarily stressful, not just for me as an individual, but for my family. This is not 1870 anymore. This is not even 1970 anymore. This is 2022. We have to not only look at how we make appointments, but also, Skip, I'm thinking, let's take the AME model that I know. They have annual conferences during the summer, but they come back and do what they call planning meetings. And at those planning meetings, the bishops make their most significant appointments. However, it is understood that it is during that time things could happen. There's a better accountability. I am grateful for my presiding prelate who does her due diligence in making sure we know, hey, there's a possibility of this coming, and our presiding elders having those conversations with us. And I know that's not the norm for everybody, but that's the way it needs to be. We've got to look at the practicality of who we're sending, how we're sending, why we're sending, and when we're sending, so that when they get there ready to work, not with a mind load of unnecessary questions, such as, how am I going to get paid? How are my children going to adjust? This just happened yesterday, and I'm expected to lead these people right now. We've got to do a more more honest assessment of ourselves and the individuals in which we're sending to these congregations.
Thank you, Marvin. If elected, with which department committees are you interested in working? What experiences, jobs, and skills do you have that you can apply to those areas as an Episcopal leader?
I am blessed to be gifted in a multitude of areas, but right now, my heart and my hands are in social justice ministry. As you may know, or as you do know, Dr. Mason, I serve as one of the founding members of Faith in Action Alabama, as well as one of the founding members of the Mobile Hub of Faith in Action Alabama, as well as now the current community organizer for Faith in Action Alabama in the Mobile area. Faith in Action Alabama desires to honor God, build community by creating pathways of opportunity for all Alabamians, especially when it comes to dismantling systemic racism in any form that we see itself rearing its ugly head. I'm always saying to the state of Alabama, Alabama claims to be the heart of Dixie. Well, Dixie needs a heart transplant. We started with that heart transplant by establishing the first public defender's office in Mobile County. We're continuing that work now by preparing to establish multiple facets of an anti-gun violence program with county, city, and our local hospitals. We do that by establishing what we call the Mobile Movement, where we adopted a middle school and took their most challenged 6th, 7th, and 8th grade boys and girls and placed them into a mentoring program where we saw astronomical turnaround in not only their behavior, but their academics as well. I am that guy that does night walks in the heart of our most challenged communities at night, not with the clergy collar on, but with my Nikes, my Adidas, whatever, my Pumas, whichever feel comfortable for that night, and I'm having conversations with people. I honestly feel if Christian Methodism is going to continue to be the jewel that she is, she must find her way to display in the showcase of our communities that we care. And how do we do that? Coming out of the pulpit, coming out of the four walls and saying, listen, I am here for you.
Thank you. Social justice has to be in the forefront of what we do as a church. And yes, I am aware of the work that you've done. And so let me ask you this. What do you say to those? And let me preface it. Many of our early bishops were in their 20s and 30s. They were young men. And I say young men because they were all men until Bishop Jefferson Snorton. But somewhere perhaps it shifted. What do you say to people who say, well, we love Marvin Lou, but he's too young right now to be a bishop? What do you say to those folks who think that your youth, and the other ones are young too? I just think you might be a tad bit younger because I've known you, and so I kind of know your age. But what do you say to folks who say, well, he's young, he has time? What do you say to them?
But the church doesn't have time. The church doesn't have time. The season is speaking for Davids to arise. The season is speaking for Hananiah, Mishaels, and Azariahs to arise. The season is speaking for Joshua's to arise. The season is speaking for Ruth's to arise. Why? Naomi's tired. Why? Moses has done his part. Why? Saul, unfortunately, may have lost his way. Why? Nebuchadnezzar has lost his natural mind. God is calling for a season of those who fought the lions, who fought the bears, who fought the wild dogs, and used their own tools to do it. And I want to make sure that our church understands this one thing. I don't need all of the tools that you used to use that work for you. Just give me the opportunity to use the gifts that God has already given me. And I promise you, my slingshot and 5 smooth stones will knock stuff out of the park in such a way that you will be able to say with me, all we do is win, 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 no matter what. When problems arise, Marvin Charles Lou Jr. will step up. And every time my hands go up, they're going to stay there because the victory shall be ours. Take a chance. No, you're not taking a chance. Make the right choice. Marvin Charles Tiger Lou Jr. The gospel growl has turned into a roar for righteousness. And if you allow me just to open my mouth and use my gifts, you'll see a change come in this generation and this season of our lives.
Well, all right, my brother. I was going to give you a chance to make your closing case and argument to the delegates, but
I got one more.
You always have one more. But before you do that,
yes,
I have one final question for you. If elected, and you are assigned wherever you're assigned, what are you going to say to your constituents, your pastors and preachers and lay? What becomes the first thoughts that you plant to them as a newly elected bishop when you address them? I wanted to ask that question to you.
The first thing that I must say to them is this: remember what my campaign platform was. I'm running for us to win. And now that I'm here, let's make this win real. Let's make this worship works and word a witness unlike any other. Let's make this impact in our neighborhoods cause an influence that they know that we're in town and we're standing for what is right. And let's let this nurture, let the least lost and left behind know, hey, there's a place and a bishop that loves me for who I am. I'm not coming to rule. I'm coming to watch God reign over and on all of us as we do this work together.
In that light, Pastor Marvin Charles Lou, go ahead and make your closing statement. Take a couple of minutes and make your final case as to why in 20 days, well, I guess maybe 23 days when we actually begin the election, why the delegates who are faithful, watching, listening, should elect you as a bishop in the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church.
Thank you again, Dr. Herman Skip Mason. I want to share with the body of believers that I've loved since March 17th, 1972. I, Marvin Charles Lou Jr., offer myself to be elected to the office of bishop because I want us to win. You've heard me talk about the witness. You've heard me talk about the influence. You've heard me talk about the nurture. But now it's up to you to decide, what does a win look like in your eyes? Does a win look like churches overflowing? If so, check the box. I've been blessed to do that. Does a win look like making an impact in your communities, that folks stopped walking past your church and are now walking into your church, not for just a word, but to work? Check. God has blessed me to do that. And does a win look like giving something to generations coming on behind you to let them know I've been through the storm and rain? I've experienced some of the same things you have, but I want you to know somebody didn't give up on me, and I'm not going to give up on you. Check. The Lord has blessed me to do that. If there are other aspects of a win that you don't see in me, then I understand. reach out to me at www.marvinlou.com and let me know what your win looks like. And I believe, just as Paul told the church at Philippi, if we go back and pray, this too God will reveal to us. I say once again, win, 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 because today is the day. I say to our God, may in all my powers engage to do your will, Lord, not just for myself, not just for Christian Methodism, but for the body of Christ as a whole. I am Marvin Charles Lou Jr., aspirant for the office of Bishop, General Conference 2022, Lou 22. That's what you ought to do.
Thank you. Thank you so much, my brother. I appreciate that. Let me bring these aspirants back up. Pastor Cassandry Keys and Presiding Elder Peris Lester and Reverend Dr. Billy Holloway. And of course, Pastor Lou, thank you all so much for the generosity of your time. I know it's a Sunday. Y'all done preach your hearts out and you're tired, because I know I am.
One more, I'm headed to another service too, man.
Are you really? Bless your heart. But this is important.
I got some more communions to do.
I bet the church is in good hands. And I thank God for you. Don't leave, folks. Don't leave yet, because I want to share that next Sunday, we will be blessed to have the remaining aspirants, Reverend Manuel Henderson, Reverend Denise Anders Modest, Dr. Phillip Washington, and Dr. Wayne Williams will be with us on next Sunday. And then on the 20th of June is our grand preview of the General Conference. Everything that you want to know. I got bishops coming, Bishop Reddick, Bishop Brown, my dean. I don't think he knows he's going to be on the show, but he's going to be on the show. Bishop Teresa Jefferson Snorton is going to come and give us a little preview of that Episcopal address, and we're going to talk about the music, things you need to know before you get there. So I'm excited about that. So thank you all. We're going to close. We're not through, because I want to now share this last video of one of our candidates who's running for the indigenous position. Of course, that's the Reverend Dr. D.K. Mugongo, who's a pastor, 11th Episcopal District. Could not be with us live, but I want to play his video. But you other aspirants, God bless you. I know you're tired, so I'm going to take you off. Go do what you do. Yes, sir.
I was looking for my video.
Preaching video. I did that one the last time. Y'all just want to hear. Look, these preachers love to hear themselves scream.
I was looking for mine.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
I didn't want to take your time. I wanted y'all to have uninterrupted time. But y'all like to watch ourselves preach. I know you do. I know you do.
No.
But listen, you're very welcome. Let's take a look at this. And God bless all of you.
Bless you. Bless you.
Thank you, Dr. Mason.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Dear Christian Methodist Episcopal Church delegates, greetings in the precious and matchless name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Reverend Dr. Diedone Karanyuze Mugongo, candidate for the office of Bishop in the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, No USA Ministries. My vision is to establish the reputation of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church by reaching the lost and to minister and serve them with utmost level of dignity and respect to encourage Christian Methodist Episcopal Church unity, Christian unity in witness of followers. A vote for Mugongo is a vote for growth, is a vote for expansion, is a vote for viability under the banner of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church through our Lord Jesus Christ. For the past 30+ years, I have been a servant of the Lord through our church. I have followed, loved, and lead others in evangelism, mission, planting over 78 churches from 1994 up to 2007, when Bishop Carter, Presiding Bishop Carter, came the first time with Reverend Mary McKinney. I make the discipleship and I planted churches, and the church grows using Wesleyan methodologies. It has been my blessing to experience numerical and spiritual growth that has not been seen, realized in many regions in the world. I am from a poor country and the region of Africa which has survived natural disaster, plagues, wars, and severe wars. I have been a leader of my countrymen and neighboring countries. My deliberation and negotiations have resulted in the delivery of humanitarian services, recovery of villages, rebuilding of people who could have lost all hope. Thank God we have been more than conquerors, as God used you, humble servant, in influencing and shaping major socio-economic development on the continent of Africa. I am accustomed to farming and working through partnership with other Christian ecumenical and international bodies. A vote for Mugongo is a vote for unity. The Christian Methodist Episcopal Church can and will be seen as a body that brings the whole body of Christ together. Together we will take the lead as brothers and sisters in demolishing cultural barriers and entering into a meaningful exchange and dialogue amongst African cultures. Finally, through the implementation of my vision in collaboration with others, I will ensure the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church takes its rightful place among other Methodist denominations in Africa. Christian Methodist Episcopal Church will be seen as a caring church, taking the lead in a cross-cultural barrier and entering into the abundant life. Please continue to pray for God's work to bloom and grow in Africa, because from 78 churches we are more than 2,500 churches in Africa. I humbly ask you, the College of Bishops, delegates, and the friends of the 2022 General Conference, for your prayers and a vote. A vote for Mugongo is a vote for turning the page to a new frontiers. A vote for Mugongo is a vote, the essential, is a vote a man who deserves. I look forward to greetings and sharing with you in Cincinnati, Ohio. Peace be unto you. Reverend Dr. Dieudonné Mugongo, 2022 candidate for Indigenous African Bishop from Democratic Republic of Congo. My greetings in Jesus Christ. Thank you.